The Vertigo games have flown under my radar for way too long at this point. While most games I've played so far have been great, there hasn't been many VR titles that have felt like a video game, if that makes sense. Well, yeah, there's a lot of great titles out there. Most VR games I've played at least give you just like a sandbox for most of the experience and make you create your own fun with the game's engine. The titles that do come to mind that feel the most like a full-on video game in VR are titles like Half-Life Alyx or the Walking Dead series, which I'm also starting to finally check out. But Vertigo Remastered and its sequel, which just released this year, feel more like proper video games in the terms of its story structure and gameplay mechanics, more than any other game that I've played in recent memory with a headset strapped to my face. So join me on this wacky multiversal ride into the depths of some facility in a random dimension, and grab your stun batons and holy rifles, and let's rise to the surface in Vertigo Remastered. Vertigo starts off with a nice little cutscene showing a cat getting eviscerated for the sake of showing what we're currently playing.
No! The kitty's dead!
We see ourselves driving up to a dingy little cabin in a forest while our silent protagonist, Sonia, has been sent here to investigate some of the mysterious sightings of meteors falling from the sky, and also disappearances in the area which seem to be linked. We shortly find out that these weren't any normal meteor strikes, but actually interdimensional portals breaking out in the area, which, of course, we get teleported through as it creeps towards the house. As we leap through dimensions, a mysterious G-Man type character with a horrifying looking face appears out of nowhere to rip our soul from our chest, does a little wiggly bit, and then slides it right back into our chest hole. He then flies away and we end up going back into some black hole, only to end up at some place called Bryan Industries. Great name for a company, by the way. And as we look around the place, we can tell it's some sort of science facility.
No shit, Einstein.
We can see only who I can presume to be Brian on a video showing himself testing his teleportation device, and oof, yeah, that explains half a corpse in the wall that I walked into. And so we take that teleporter doohickey, smart choice. And this is actually one of the first gameplay mechanics I want to highlight about this game. Now, this little teleporter device works as a way to implement the same accessibility feature you'd see for like teleporting and other VR games, but making it more of a usable resource to move around the map, instead of being forced to play that way based on some comfort setting that's in the game. While there's unfortunately no dedicated sprint button for this title, but there is a jump button, this teleporter does really make up for it by letting us jump forward pretty quickly using the teleporter, and it's extremely useful during combat. Plus, it can be upgraded as well throughout the game, which makes its range and speed way faster to help with some of the later game experiences. And speaking of upgrades, there's this stuff that you can find throughout the levels that I like to call space piss, and it's introduced right here at the start. The space piss is actually used as upgrade materials that you collect with your teleporter, which can be used to upgrade the teleporter itself, your movement speed, and even the starter pistol you find early on in the game. And speaking of early on and weapons, the first weapon we find ourselves is a stun baton that kind of acts like a Walmart branded lightsaber in a way. It's extremely viable to use throughout the game, don't get me wrong, and it also deflects incoming blasts from enemies, which brings that feeling of being a Jedi into the mix at times. I mean, only if you really get to deflect those shots, unlike me. After we get this baton, there's a bit of a platforming puzzle in this room that we need to get through to continue. And throughout the game, you'll notice there's a bit of a variety in the puzzle design.
I put the new forges on the Jeep. I trap until the letter button is underneath.
And I would even argue that the addition of the various puzzles throughout the game kind of remind me of the structure of the Half-Life series. The Half-Life series had this gameplay philosophy of run, think, shoot, live, where every gameplay moment throughout the experience requires active thinking when engaging in groups of enemies, as well as quick thinking in first-person puzzle moments. And Vertigo Remastered, as well as its sequel, take direct inspiration so much from the Half-Life series in its gameplay structure and some of its story elements, where you can almost see the inspirations clear as day, with the same gameplay philosophy throughout the entire series, and I absolutely adore it. As we make our way through the facility, the only objective we really have is that we need to escape this place, wherever the hell we are, by any means necessary, and reach the surface of this underground facility. Again, very similar to Half-Life 1 with Black Mesa. So we make our way through some vents, and eventually through some caverns that look like they may lead to another area, and what looks like another company, Planck Interdimensional Energy Solutions. As we make our way through said caverns, we sneak up on some lonely guy with a hand for a head. I go up to him to see what's wrong, and oh boy.
What the fuck? Uh-oh. Whoa, 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 hey, I just got here, buddy. Whoa!
Yeah, that's right. This game has full-fledged boss fights littered throughout the entire story as well. And that in of itself adds another pillar to the foundations that make this game feel like a proper video game on this platform. And this is the remastered version of this game, meaning that these boss fights have been around for quite a while, and yet other VR titles aren't really doing stuff like this. Other games with similar campaign structures like Boneworks typically leave these things towards the end of the game, having the majority of the story be a build-up of learning the game's mechanics and eventually mastering everything to tackle what's waiting for us towards the last few levels. But Vertigo throws all that shit out of the window and has us face off against a giant beast in a vast cave with only an electric nightstick to fend ourselves off, and I fucking love it. Funnily enough, I've never even played Beat Saber in my entire time of playing VR games, and yet this boss fight is what I imagine Beat Saber to feel like, except, you know, more to the beat of an actual song, of course. And I know Grimlord is doing stuff with boss fights now, but still, more VR games need these type of inventive boss fights in their campaign, just for the replayability alone. Anyways, after kicking this multi-dimensional creature's ass and claiming victory with my baton, I was able to finally head out and continue through the caves and into the next facility, and thankfully the game provides your first gun in this area. This is the one I mentioned earlier that can be upgraded over time with our magic piss, and it's a pretty viable weapon throughout the game. And speaking of weapons, Vertigo 1 has a great variety of guns that all feel completely different from one another that you progressively collect throughout the entirety of the campaign. Of course, there's the pistol like I mentioned before, but you also have your other typical weapons you'd find in any other game like this one, akin to the weapon structure of something like Half-Life or Doom Eternal, where each weapon is specifically designed to fit a different role, yet still be viable in most situations. Things like your typical shotgun, an assault rifle, or plasma rifle in this case, and of course an obligatory explosive weapon, but then you have special weapons that also come in handy in a lot of situations, like the Holy Rifle.
It's the holy weapon.
With its disturbingly pulsating veins. It pretty much decimates most enemies you come across. Boom. But overheats after a little bit of use, making you have to switch between your other roster of weapons. You can change your weapons on the fly too, through a quick select option, very similar to what you'd see in Half-Life Alyx, which is nice to see that mechanic here since it keeps weapon switching fast and adds a bit of a light gun element to the whole thing. I also appreciate that the game doesn't require you to pick up ammo everywhere in your surroundings like most other VR titles with guns, but instead your ammo regenerates over time for each weapon, which lends into switching up that weapon variety during gameplay. Plus the addition of dual wielding in Vertigo 1 is incredibly fun to use, and somewhat brings back some Halo 2 memories if I'm being honest. However, you won't be able to dual wield the same weapon, so you can't run around with like 2 plasma rifles for instance. But once you have most weapons in your inventory, it's going to make combat incredibly engaging throughout the entirety of the story. As we get deeper into the Plank complex, we notice a lot of different interdimensional beings sprawled about the facility, besides our unwelcoming robot friends, of course. There are things like those handymen we ran into before that got yeeted by the first boss, and these things are like your basic zombie type enemies with big ol' cyclop hands for heads, and sharp bones protruding from their arms that they can hit you pretty damn hard with. Then we have these hairy spider type things with big ol' ugly mugs that can pretty much fuck you up if they group up on you. There's also another type of creature that's pretty similar, but more stumpy, I guess you could say, that has a couple different variants that you can come across. But there's one that just bites you when it gets pretty close, and another that drives spikes out of its skin to attack you when you get close to them. But we'll return to those ones later. For most of the game, we'll see a lot of different things scattered around, as well as this little sentient Minecraft head that's laying eggs in this back office, and yeah, what happened next isn't technically allowed to be seen on YouTube. Don't want to go against guidelines. Hell, I haven't even hit 1,000 subs yet. Which, by the way, subscribe if you haven't already. Anyways, you learn right off the bat that most things in the game are pretty much out to kill you, so we'll basically be fighting our way through the place from here on out. I finally reached this open part of the labs that requires us to extend a bridge out to the surface elevator in the middle. And at this point, let's stop it real quick. I'll be spoiling things for the rest of this video for this game, and honestly, this game is a little bit less than 5 hours long, so I highly recommend that you check it out for yourself, but if you've already played it or don't mind the spoilers, definitely stick around. Otherwise, skip to this time code on screen if you don't want the game spoiled at all. Alright, ready? Let's get to it. While in this vast open area in the Plank Labs, this part kind of reminded me a bit of the Boneworks games with its vast open corridors, and I was definitely vibing with it. But this is also where we find the shotgun that I mentioned before. After fighting some bots along our way up to extend the bridges, we get the bridges to extend to the elevator and we make our way down to it to escape. But of course, we're met with a giant robot that pretty much is like, fight! And throws us way back deeper into the labs. But of course, being us, the persistent bastard who defeated a giant beast with a stick, we make our way back up to the elevator and ride it up anyways. This giant bot is about to become our next boss fight, it seems, until it learns pretty quickly that it's just not going to be able to fit on this elevator ride with us. Unfortunately, that stops the elevator for us, but thankfully a vent is just chilling nearby, so we go through the vents, see some creepy writing on the walls mentioning the void, again reminding me more of Boneworks, eventually fighting our way through the plank facilities. As we fight our way through a bunch of plank bots and through the offices, we find ourselves in this research lab, but it's pretty dark and
Whoa!
as we creep through the halls and get jump scared by the mold from Resident Evil 7, we find out they've actually been studying some mold-like creatures here and even gave them names. But Frankie Boy here looks like he's escaped from his cage. So of course, we set out deeper into the laboratories. And oh shit.
Hi Frank. Hey, buddy. How you doing? Hey there.
So we found Frank, and he's pretty much devoured the entire research sector of this facility. And it's up to us to destroy this bad boy with the mounted rocket launchers that are dotted across the area. Now this boss fight, even while being scripted, was one of the most creative boss encounters I've seen on the VR platform. While teleporting your way across the various beams and office desks and stuff just littered about, there's tentacles you'll have to dodge left and right while making your way to these towers to actually launch the rockets at Frankie Boy. And honestly, it was pretty damn thrilling. After we shoot enough rockets into Frank's eye and passing out from the massive explosion, we awake to the room cleared and a obvious giant exit sign amidst the way out of here. But I'm not leaving without checking what happened to Frankie Boy first.
Oh, hey. What's up, Frank? You got out of your cage and now you're coming with me.
As we make our way through the exit and through some more facilities, we find an elevator to what looks like the surface we've been looking for, but not without a friendly message from the robots that are hunting us down. Seems we're on high alert at this point, so we find ourselves a plasma rifle that I mentioned earlier and surface to the light above. After we fight a bunch of robot reinforcements through what looks like a huge dome, and even some new robot types, which are some big old boys, that can get shields later on, we eventually find a starship and try flying it out of this dome that we're in. And of course. We're still stuck in this facility. So we never even made it to the surface in the first place. But after we get out of the wreckage and get through more of the facility, we eventually end up in yet another cave with some enemies living inside of it, of course. Turns out we stumbled upon some colony in here, but we also have a couple of puzzles to complete to move past this area. Our first objective is to find a few battery babies, I guess we'll call them. And these little suckers will help power up the door to get us out of this cave. Now, admittedly, this room took me a little bit to get past, mainly because of this side puzzle in here to get the rest of the battery babies behind this giant skeleton. Now, I saw that there were a bunch of these terminal pieces laying around the place, and when I brought them back here, I guess I wasn't attaching them to the correct spot. Turns out I wasn't actually looking at the motherboard behind me that basically had the answer right there, so honestly, I was just being a dumbass on this part. But after wallowing in my own idiocy, I finally got the battery babies and got them all into the door. Turns out though, this door led to the mother of all the beings that live in this cave, which of course meant another boss fight on our hands.
Oh, hi there. Hi. Hello.
Hell yeah. Now this one was difficult, mainly because of the goons that she sends out over the course of the fight, and they ended up overwhelming me quite a few times. But I finally took the Big Mama out, bringing down a giant stalactite on her head, looking like a scene straight out of Hot Fuzz.
Yo! Holy shit!
After this boss is all cleared up and ending up at the robot production facility. Now security has finally caught wind of our acts and they're putting everything they have on us at this point forward as we make our way closer to the surface. As we go through more of the facilities and power up this giant being that's powering the place, we get closer to the surface but are greeted by an entire squad of robots waiting to mow us down. So we double that shit and give it back to them by tearing every one of those robots apart with our weapon roster. And this is where we finally get to close off our weapon wheel by adding the final weapon to our inventory. A fucking minigun.
Let's go!
After clearing out the entire robot production facility, we finally find an elevator and make our way up to the surface to take our grand escape out of here. And, oh, god damn it.
Well, Chase comes to... And not a moment too soon. You were practically out the door. My goodness.
Yeah, pretty much.
And down in assembly?
Fuck you. Oh! What the hell?
And we're stopped by yet another G-Man? Wait, hold on. This game has 2 G-Man type characters?
G-Man?
Name is Gentlehand, sworn protector of all fellow alien life forms, so unfortunately residing in this facility, yourself included. If you walk out that door, an orbital strike will level this entire mountain.
Okay, anyway, this guy basically tells us that our work isn't finished here. There's no way we're escaping this place. So he throws us back down into the depths of the core with a sweet little side-scrolling cutscene of our elevator pod tumbling back down to the depths of the core, with Sonya just flopping around on the inside. Our elevator pops down into the depths of the core and the game pretty much ends from there. And yeah, this ending caught me by surprise because I just wanted to play more. But thankfully, the second one, Vertigo 2, is already available, so we'll be covering that pretty soon in one of our next videos. So stay tuned. Overall though, Vertigo Remastered is a fantastic video game experience. And I mean that in the sense that this is more than just another VR title, if that makes sense. Vertigo takes the traditional gameplay structure you'd find from any other flat screen video game or first-person shooter, with its intriguing story, its puzzle design, and even the bosses filled throughout the game, bring that exact feeling of a proper video game experience into the realm of VR. And I think more VR titles need to follow within that same philosophy. And mind you, I haven't even mentioned one of the most interesting aspects of the Vertigo series as a whole. The music in this game, as well as most of the game itself, is developed by like 3 devs over the course of a few years. It honestly goes to show that you don't need to rely on AAA studios or big budget titles to provide a thrilling and, just most importantly, fun gaming experience in VR. All it takes is a solid vision and the drive to see that vision through, and it's honestly inspiring to see after playing these games. So shout out to Zach and the rest of these devs for making some fantastic VR titles, and they're honestly some of the best I've played in a while, besides the last one that I talked about, but these games are just on another level. While this game is short, it does have some replayability as well with its upgrade mechanics, and it even has some DLC that came out shortly after, which features some different sandbox elements if you wanted to kind of spend more time in the game. That being said, stay tuned because I will be covering Vertigo 2, and let me just tell you right off the bat, Vertigo 2 is everything a sequel should be and more, and I cannot wait to talk about it. Anyway, that's all from me, everybody. If you liked the video and you enjoyed what you saw, make sure to give it a like. If you didn't like it, though, just, of course, give a dislike, even though that'll make me sad. And also subscribe if you're wanting to see more content like this. I make some VR content as well as some non-VR content on the side every once in a while. Also, make sure to go out and buy these games. I cannot recommend them enough. They're incredible works of art, so definitely go out and buy these ones if you haven't already. Anyways, everybody, I'm out. I will see you next time. And yeah, bye. Make sure to subscribe. Anyways, bye.